then we over back to the main university admission office, and then we go from there. So that's my main role here. I'm also really heavily involved in the Pennsylvania Association of College Admission Counseling. So it's nice to see a couple familiar faces from there on this call. And then prior to me being at Westchester, I worked at Ursinus College in Collegeville, Pennsylvania for almost 5 years as a traditional undergraduate admission counselor. And then prior to that, I worked at Roanoke College in Southern Virginia, which is actually where I went to school. I grew up in Buffalo and wanted the furthest point away from snow and cold my parents would let me get. So Virginia was my main point. So excited to be with you guys today and to kick things off.
Thank you so much, so much. So, why don't you go ahead and get started and share with us, the whole piece around what's happening at Westchester, a little bit on what's going on in music that Westchester's involved in, and students who are applying, and how all that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So I put together kind of like a very generic overall presentation about kind of supporting students through the process and things to look out for, and things that sometimes I've realized from this role that aren't commonly known, kind of in that space. But in terms of Westchester in particular, our School of Music is growing, which is fantastic when at this point in time, in the world we live in, a lot of arts and fine arts are getting pulled funding and support from universities and school districts and places all over the place. So it's been really exciting to see that we are thriving, certainly in the environment. Our School of Music is primarily undergraduate focused. We have about 450 students, about 50 of them are graduate level, and about 400 are undergraduates. The 50 graduate students, most of them are doing summers only in our Masters of Music Ed program. So our primary performance spots are really going to our undergraduate students, which is absolutely incredible, regardless of their major, if they are performance major or if they're music ed or composition or whatever degree program they're really interested in.
Okay, yeah. So you have some slides. I guess that now is a good time to go ahead and share your presentation, and we'll sit back and sip our coffee and um, learn a lot more.
So, sure. Mhm. I'm hoping you all can see that okay. Great.
Looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so as I mentioned before, prior to me coming to Westchester, I was in traditional undergraduate recruiting. I always tell students my little secret is I'm actually not a musician. I've never played an instrument before. So I certainly sing to the radio in my car, but I don't think they would want much more than that. So I've learned a lot throughout this process, and a lot of things that I would imagine are fairly new if you've never had a student kind of look into performing arts before as a career path, or for counseling them into what types of programs to start looking at. So like I said, this is really kind of just surface level of things to be aware of, tips, tricks, all of that kind of good stuff. Um, but the one of the biggest thing is really talking to students about what their goal is with pursuing a music or a fine arts degree, and also kind of understanding the differences in the different degree tracks. So again, things I had no idea about prior to coming to Westchester. Our music program offers Bachelor's of Music degrees. So it's not a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. It is a Bachelor of Music degree, which is really the top kind of professional track degree in that space. Performing arts, so like a bachelor's of fine arts is also a top kind of degree in terms of that as well, and definitely more rigorous. So both of those are going to be primarily focused within the arts space that the students are really interested in majoring in. A bachelor's of arts or a bachelor's of science in music or art is going to be a little bit more interdisciplinary. They're going to get a little bit more of like the general education requirements, things like that. And specifically at Westchester, because of our Bachelor's of Music degrees, we actually have a special dispensation from the university that our students are taking about 33% less general education courses than the rest of majors on campus. So our friends in like the business program are taking far more general ed courses than our music students because so much of their curriculum needs to be focused within the music space. Um, and again, this is going to differ kind of a little bit from university to university, but one of the other things that I find a lot of parents are really surprised about is that our like music education program is housed in the School of Music. It's not in the College of Ed. They're certainly certified through the Pennsylvania Department of Education and have to take some similar requirements, but their primary focus is teaching music education. It's not necessarily teaching and then the music piece of it, right? It's focused really significantly in teaching music education. So again, just a couple of things that I think are misconceptions or people aren't unaware of kind of overall. Um, and then kind of the conservatory, liberal arts university, some of those things kind of also fit into the breakdowns of the degrees, right? So a conservatory is going to be really focused primarily in those tracks and barely have any gen eds if they do have any general education courses. And then a university, our dean considers us a conservatory hybrid, right? Because we offer that professional music degree in that they're getting a lot of really solid focused music experience, but also still able to dabble outside of the School of Music if they would like. And then again, locations, kind of what a student is really looking for, making sure there's a great community outside of the institution is going to be also really important for them in terms of internships, just making connections, building those relationships. That's really going to help them for what they plan to do afterwards. We find our students, even though we have an incredible career services program at Westchester and center for that, our students aren't using it because of the niche of the program and because of their desire for connections within this specific community. So they're really focused on those relationships with our faculty to be able to kind of help provide those connections and network for our students. In terms of the timeline, I know sometimes it's hard, just for students in general. I know I mentioned earlier to a few people, I have two toddlers and a 16-year-old, right? So I'm all over the spectrum in terms of where my children are at. But I'm very quickly learning it from the parent perspective with my 16-year-old that this process is very interesting. And my husband and I both do the same thing. My husband also works in college admission. So for two people who we like to think we know what we're talking about, she does not think so. So it is very fun in our house, but also just realizing that students might not really know that they want to go into this field necessarily. But the earlier that they can kind of plan, obviously the better across the board, but particularly for the arts and performing arts community. So just kind of going over some things that they can do, really just paying attention to the admission requirements, the audition dates, and the repertoire and what comes first in the process, right? So different schools work differently. And I find that students really struggle with this in the process of, do they apply to the university first? Do they audition first? How does that process work? Do they have to submit their portfolio or their pre-screen? And then they kind of the steps. And again, every university works different, but for us at Westchester, they have to apply through the Common App first, and then we work on the audition process. We don't require pre-screens. Most times schools that require the pre-screen or like a portfolio review before they actually apply is really due to the volume that they are receiving in terms of their applications. Just a way to kind of, one, protect faculty time, but also just kind of direct students and help them through. Is this a program that is really what they're looking for or kind of the level that they're assuming it is. And then paying attention to how to register for auditions. That's always a thing that I really work with students on, making sure that they're aware in the process. Are they doing it through a platform like Accepted? Accepted is really widely used within the music and arts community in terms of registering students on that end. Or are they using something through the university like Slate, which ours is found in their admission portal? We try to make it as streamlined as we can, especially being a state school, right? Where we're here to serve the Commonwealth. So making it as accessible and easy as we can for students. But by starting early, students are able to track and kind of organize that information a little bit better, so that it's a little bit easier once they kind of start their senior year in terms of that. And again, pre-screening videos, that's very common in terms of the music and theater spaces. And then a resume is always really helpful. I know, I'm sure you guys work with your students in terms of like a regular traditional resume, but a music specific resume or theater or art specific resume is really helpful, especially when they have a lot of times auditions are a really short period of time that they're with faculty. So if they're able to present the faculty with something or submit something on the front end with their application, it's helpful for the faculty to be able to review and get a good sense of who this student is in the process. But including performances, training, if they take private lessons, certain things like that, if they've been enrolled in specific programs, different tracks within their high school, just having that information is really helpful for faculty. And then personal statements and essays as well. So again, something that I find that is helpful to guide students through with the process is a lot of times the requirements for a specific program like the School of Music at Westchester are a little bit different from just the traditional student at Westchester, right? So students submit their essays through the Common Application, which is great. The admission office uses that, but we ask students to also submit materials. If it's music ed, they submit a short essay about why they're interested in music education. Same with music therapy. And then for degrees such as composition or studio comp, we ask them to submit pieces that they've composed and upload that separately, right? So again, just making sure students are aware of all the different nuances and what is important to submit in terms of before even coming to an audition. And to follow each school's instructions. They're all different. I wish it was a little bit more streamlined for students in this process, but a lot of schools just require different things. Again, working with teachers and mentors who can help guide in terms of preparation, especially if you're not super tied into that space. Oftentimes we see students and I'm like, have you talked to your band director about applying for a music degree? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. But they could have gotten a lot more support in terms of the prep for an audition if they did speak to their band director or art teacher or whoever, fill in the blank. In terms of just being more prepared. They also are able to provide connections as well, right? So our band directors at Westchester are very familiar with all of the local band directors. So being able to connect them ahead of time is also really, really helpful. But staying active and making sure that they're not kind of stopping what they're doing to focus on, like in their high school career, to focus on prep for college is also really important. We want students to continue to be involved and to be able to do that. I also recommend that students get to visit and meet with faculty. I always find sometimes when I talk to families, I tell students that they should come and take a trial lesson before they audition. And families are like, well, isn't that cheating? No, it's not cheating. We certainly, if a school offers it, we want students to take advantage of those opportunities. So we want students to come and meet. If our student plays the flute, come meet with Dr. Rayleigh, our flute professor, and come take a lesson with her. So, in the fine arts area, it's so much different from, I was a history major, so my college experience, right? Did I care afterwards who was teaching my classes? Absolutely. But on the front end of my college search, I wasn't focused on what faculty were on staff and teaching those classes. Whereas in the fine arts, it's definitely a little bit different in terms of these students are really looking to study with somebody who has an incredible professional career outside of just teaching, and making sure that they mesh well with that person. You're going to be spending a lot of time with that person over the course of your study. So making sure that it's somebody that you really connect with and be able to form a relationship with. And so often I talk to students that the reason why they chose to come here versus another institution was because of who was teaching that primary instrument. So it's definitely a really great opportunity. It also kind of shakes some of the nerves too, right? So our auditions are with that individual professor. So if I'm a flute student and I get to meet with Dr. Rayleigh the summer before I audition, then walking into my audition, at least I'm a little less nervous because it's not a new face. It's somebody I've already met before and have had some contact with. So again, there's a lot of pros to that. And again, I think students feel like it's cheating somehow or gaming the system, but it's really not. The other benefit too is that they're able to play or run past our faculty what pieces that they're thinking about playing for their audition. So again, just having access and being able to provide students with some of those connections is really helpful in the process. And then summer camps and portfolio boot camps, a lot of times schools will offer these. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the school that the student is applying to if they're applying to a school that's further away or something like that. But again, our faculty teach at our summer camps, right? So they're just getting the sense of who our faculty are, getting to meet them, build relationships with them ahead of time, as well as some of those like portfolio boot camps. I know a lot of art schools will offer that to where students can bring their portfolios and work that they have so far and get to meet with faculty, get some feedback early on in the process. They're just better prepared going into their senior year and going into those final auditions and reviews to be able to just kind of help support them through that. And then again, seeking the specific admission counselor. A lot of times schools have specific liaisons that work with degree programs. I'm a unicorn at Westchester, I always like to say. I'm the only non-university main admissions person that is it within a school or college, but a lot of music and art programs in particular have a specific admission office or faculty who work specifically on the recruitment end of things to be able to ask questions for. And students will just get far deeper answers and more I think applicable information in terms of what they're really seeking out in these experiences, if they're able to contact those folks rather than just the university admission office. Kind of some common pitfalls. Again, I've talked a little bit about this, but some things that I see that we're very fortunate. Westchester's a rolling university in terms of admission. So even if a student misses our larger audition days, we're not going to turn a student away from auditioning, right? So even if they come to me, May 15th and are like, oh, I didn't realize I had to audition. Is it still possible? I'm able to say yes, and we can work through that. I can't necessarily guarantee an admit or a scholarship or anything, but we're not going to turn a student away from auditioning. But just making sure that students are aware of deadlines and the differences in all the schools that they're applying to. Not following the audition requirements exactly. Again, we're fairly flexible, but I know a lot of institutions might not necessarily be. So making sure that students are really clear in terms of their two contrasting pieces. And if it's a voice student, is singing in a foreign language required? And again, just really paying attention to the programs and how students are preparing on the front end for those things. Choosing materials that don't suit them and their playing level. And again, this is where it's really helpful to have the band or choir directors or art teachers or people who are teaching them in the classroom kind of work with you guys as the counselors and advisors to help make sure that these students are prepared and choosing repertoire that's appropriate for them at their level and really coming strong in terms of where these students are at right now. We're not looking for a perfect student, right? We're looking for students who are able to grow. We're looking for students who are able to make quick changes and take feedback within those interactions, those auditions, and who have the work ethic, right? Yes, they need to have a certain level of playing, but if they have an amateur issue or something like that, and our faculty feel like they're able to make adjustments quickly and the students are able to respond to it, that's a huge part as well in terms of the students that we're looking for. The other thing, as some of these kind of different or new tracks are emerging within the performing arts field. So things like studio composition and we have students who are looking to compose for video games and do different things like that. Students who are kind of in a non-traditional, like straightforward, like performance or music education track. I'm seeing that a lot of these students aren't aware that at a university like Westchester, who has a kind of traditional school of music, who does offer some of these programs, that a primary instrument is required, right? So students need to be proficient on a primary instrument. They'll take lessons on that primary instrument, whether that is piano, a wind instrument, a strings instrument, or their voice. They need to be proficient in that area because of the type of degree that we offer, right? Because we're offering those bachelors of music, which is a professional track degree. Some schools that are offering a composition program, let's say, that is a Bachelor of Science, or a Bachelor of Art in music, they might not necessarily need to audition on that primary instrument. They might just need to submit that supplemental information. But again, just kind of debunking some of these things that I see students not necessarily knowing or coming prepared on the front end of things. And then just kind of putting all their eggs in one basket. Again, that's not music specific, but a lot of times it kind of is more prevalent in students who are looking at fine art schools, is that they really get attached to one or the other, and kind of focus all their efforts in one area. But so I'm happy to answer. I know there was a couple of questions, but I think I may have answered them in the chat. Candace, I don't know if you want to step
Yes, it looked
in.
like, and team, if I missed any, let me know. But Barbara did have a question, and then she said, as you were speaking, you did answer it. And so,
Perfect.
folks, if you have questions, drop those in the chat for us, and we'll be happy to make sure that Brittany addresses them. But I'm going to kind of get us rolling because I had a couple questions that I thought would be helpful. And I'm going to apologize if I missed the details of some of this, but you know how your brain just starts thinking like, what about this? So, so can you kind of weigh for us the different aspects of admission and what might have more weight than, or if that's the case? So is the portfolio, stronger than the essay, or is the essay a complement to, the process? And if it's kind of homogenous, that's okay too. But my brain was thinking about that because programs do have that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And some of it ties into, again, what type of degree program the student is really applying for, right? So for us, because we have the Bachelor's of Music degrees, we do put a lot of weight on the performance piece of it. And that the essay and some of those other things kind of supplement. I will say, for Westchester in particular, again, I'm not going to speak for every school, but we also really take into account their GPA, right? So we also want to make sure that students are
Right.
doing really well in the classroom, because that doesn't change, just the topic of what they're studying changes, right? We really look for students who are really strong academically, but also have that component of being able to perform at a good level, as well. So the essay and some of those other pieces are definitely secondary, but we put a lot of weight on those auditions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Brittany, are most of the students coming from Pennsylvania or is it more diverse? Where are the students coming from?
I would say about two-thirds of our program are primarily Pennsylvania. And then I would say a good chunk are New Jersey. We're seeing a larger traction with some of our programs in Maryland and New York, and then as well as Northern Virginia too.
Yeah,
So
that's
I've seen
interesting.
a lot of growth in those areas. Something that I think is really helping in terms of that, specifically for Westchester, is our music therapy program. A lot of universities don't offer that as an undergraduate degree track, where there's only a small handful across the country that really offer the undergraduate level of music therapy. And with that degree, students are certified clinically, to practice after they graduate. They are required to do 900 hours pre internship, and then they're required to do a full internship for a semester, similar to like a student teaching model.
Right. Yeah. To be honest, shame on me, but Westchester is the only one in this area that I really know of that has a specific one where you're you finish a
Mhm.
clinical. So I keep recommending it because I probably should do more research, but I like Westchester too. But
Yeah.
well, actually that leads me to this one. And folks, oh, there is a question in the chat. Let someone else get their question in. Um, so Barbara is asking, can you speak to how your students spend their summers and the kinds of employment opportunities students head into after graduation? This is Barbara is my people because that was my question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we don't offer a lot of summer courses for undergraduates at Westchester, right? So students really are able to take their summers. Oftentimes, we have students who will enroll in programs either abroad, or in different areas of the country, at the collegiate level as kind of like a summer camp sort of thing, but an immersive program. And we see that particularly with students who want to do a study abroad program, but because of the nature of our program, it's really hard to fit a full semester at a university. So being able to take advantage of some of these summer programs is really helpful for these students, kind of ticking off some of their check boxes of what they're looking for in a college experience. So oftentimes they'll do that. Some of our faculty are performing in festivals. Our strings faculty, for example, we have a resident quartet. The Dolly Quartet is our strings faculty here at Westchester, and they perform globally, but also they host their own festival. So they're asking our students to either participate in the festival, work the festival, different things like that. Um, and then we will also have students kind of postgraduate. It depends on what they're looking to do. But if a student is willing to move, especially in the music education space where the job is, we are able to get them hired really quickly. A lot of times, students within this space really think that they're going to go home and teach in their own district, and be
Wow.
like the band director at their high school, right?
Right.
Which, if you think about who those people are, they're probably not going anywhere, and not close to retiring, right? So
Right.
as long as students are flexible, and again, that's says something too in terms of our program, and that our students, when they graduate from Westchester with a music education degree, they're certified K through 12 in band, choir, orchestra, and general music, right? So while they might not get their first choice right away, if they're willing to move and work where the job is, they're certainly able to do that. Again, I mentioned our therapy program, they're certified, so they're able to walk into a hospital or a clinic or anywhere and get hired because they have the right certifications. And then our like composition students, again, it just depends on the space that they're really interested in working
Right.
in. But our faculty are really tied into different areas, in terms of being able to connect them within the industry. And a lot of our performance majors will go just straight to graduate school, to pursue those master's or doctoral programs.
That's awesome. We do have one other question in the chat. Terry was asking, do you see many applicants from the School District of Philadelphia?
I don't see a ton. We do get a good number, and I've been able to selfishly increase that number with my work with Project 440. But I think a lot of times, because of students being so close to Temple, or being in that urban environment, that Westchester maybe isn't something that kind of really quickly comes to the top of their list, in terms of having a really strong music program. And partly, I think it's also like just like a lack of us really doing a large marketing front, right, in terms of
Yeah.
that. So again, I'm happy to work with folks and see what we can do and help with that. We also have been talking about how we can better support the teachers in the school district of Philadelphia, specifically music, right? In terms of offering workshops and things over the summer. We have started within our master's program, we have a master's plus discount. So for folks who have a master's degree, if they want to come back and take like our modern band workshop, or some different opportunities that we offer within the School of Music for graduate level courses, they're able to receive a discount. Being aware of the UArts closure, right, and that they were supporting a lot of faculty within the School District of Philadelphia, we are trying to not replace them, right, but still offer opportunities and ways to engage that group of teachers. So,
Right. Well, be careful what you ask for because Philadelphia
mm,
College Prep Roundtable has a reputation for boosting things that get presented in this platform. So,
we'll take
I,
it.
yeah, I do have one, looks like one more question. Dean is asking for just a little bit more clarification. Can a strong arts performance compensate for weaker areas elsewhere in the application?
Yeah, it definitely can. Again, I mentioned that we put a good amount of weight on their GPA as well, right? But we're not looking for a 4.0 student. So, if a student is a little bit weaker, and again, I was a history major, right? So I was really good at history and English. I was terrible at math and science, right? It's just how our brains are wired as humans. So, and particularly our fine art students and students in that space, probably something like math isn't always their strong point, right? Or science. So if a student, doesn't have it struggles in some of those areas, or their essay isn't as strong, that's not necessarily a deal breaker for us. Um, in terms of the application process. And we do have a little bit of wiggle room, especially depending on the instrument, right? We are at no lack of trumpets right now in the School of Music. However, we will always take a strings or a double reed player, and that's across the board, right? That's
Wow, who knew?
Westchester specific. So if you have a student kind of in one of those areas, sometimes again, that also helps their instrument that they play.
I didn't know that trumpets were that popular and pivotal.
Oh, lots of trumpets, lots of percussion and saxophones.
Wow, that is really crazy. Maybe we have to go buy some more violins for the kids in schools because who knew? All
Strings
right.
and double reeds.
Yeah, my goodness, this was great, Brittany. I actually learned a lot. I haven't had a kind of performing arts portfolio music update in a minute, so this was really, really good. And we appreciate it. Any final thoughts or I guess too, please share how folks can reach out to you. How do we get in touch? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email was up on that screen, but if you didn't get it, I'll put it in the chat. But I'm happy to help answer questions. Again, I don't frequently get out into the schools, but if you want me to come talk to faculty or a certain group of students or something, I'm happy to do that as well.
That is great. Well, folks, join me in thanking Brittany. This was really, really good. It was a great update to hear more about how students can pursue and where they can go career-wise. So thank you so much. And Brittany, if you're able to stay for the rest of the meeting and join us, please do.
Yeah.
That's something that we always invite our presenters to, join us and just become a part of the crew. Anybody who has joined recently into the meetings, please share who you are so that as Brittany is joining us, she can connect with you as well. But once again, thank you, Brittany. We really appreciate it. But wait, folks, there's more. We've got another really good presenter coming. So we're bringing you the latest and greatest. Now, this one you're really going to appreciate because I think there's so much going on in this space these days that we really wanted to bring this particular presentation to you. And I'm going to tee it up this way just to say it is March Madness. And the madness has already begun. So if you are basketball, men and women's basketball fans, just saying. I know we are participating. I know my family and I are participating in brackets. And just so in case you just wanted to know, you have to have your bracket in by 11:30-ish, maybe 11:45 at the latest. And I'm teeing you up, Elizabeth. Next, we have, and Elizabeth, are you up and ready to go? Yes, wonderful. Next, we're bringing to you Elizabeth Thompson, and she's the Associate Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships for the NCAA. This is the perfect time of year to have a NCAA representative and Elizabeth with us. We had a great conversation when we were preparing for this meeting, so I think you guys are really going to get a great update if you are somewhat in the past few years familiar with NCAA and student athletes and what they need to do. And if you're not at all familiar, Elizabeth is going to get you straightened out for sure. So Elizabeth, welcome, welcome. We appreciate you. And can you just give us a little bit of a more formal introduction about you and who you are and the work that you do? And I know you're going to share a great presentation with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Are you able to see my screen before
Yes,
my
we can
introduction?
hear you good and see your screen. Your background
Awesome.
is awesome.
Welcome to my virtual background. We are kicking off things. I'm Elizabeth Thompson. I'm our Associate Director for Outreach and Strategic Partnerships with the NCAA. And so we are in the thick of it here in Indianapolis, preparing for men's Final Four locally, women's Final Four in Phoenix. And we're excited to be hosting Division One, Two, and Three national championships, as well as the NIT and WBIT championships here in our city. So I'm actually joining you from the car in between high schools because we're doing a high school tour to the Final Four where we're taking our championship trophy around today to local high schools, talking to counselors, coaches, athletic directors. So really excited to be able to be here with you guys in between that time. So I apologize if the sun is now hitting at a weird angle. It wasn't when I first parked. But I wanted to give you guys some updates as it affects the high school community around NCAA initial eligibility to ensure that student athletes are set up for success when it comes to collegiate eligibility and academic preparedness. So the first thing that I want to touch on is a few updates to the sports that are offered at NCAA member schools. The most recent being acrobatics and tumbling, as well as stunt being added as championship sports. You'll see those listed under spring sports for women. Also, women's wrestling just had their national championship last week, and that you'll see listed under winter sports. That's our other newest championship sport. And then many of you may have heard this, but women's flag is the latest emerging sport, which was just added this past January. And we actually anticipate it to be the most fast track sport to move from emerging sport status to championship status. And so we're really excited to see the growth. There's already over 62 different universities across the NCAA that have women's flag football at the varsity level offering scholarships. And we anticipate by this fall semester there being over 100 schools. So it is the quickest growing sport that we're seeing at the college level right now. And just to give you an update on emerging sports do still have to meet NCAA initial eligibility requirements. Those students have to register with the NCAA. So everything that I'm covering today, those do apply to students participating in emerging sports. All of this information I'm going to provide in a PDF, or I think I already did, but if not, I'll follow up again after today's presentation. But everything you see linked in blue is a hyperlink resource that you can access after today's presentation. We have a really great interactive map for schools, for students, for their parents, that in that map, they can search by their sport, they can search by division to get an idea of where schools are located. So if they're interested in, participating in flag football, for example, that's one that's getting updated in the coming weeks to this membership map. But say they're interested in Division II men's football, they can search and see all of the schools that have teams so that they can have an idea of maybe where they want to be applying or where they want to be reaching out and trying to promote themselves to be recruited for that school. And then, as I said in the beginning, I'm here on behalf of the Eligibility Center, which is a department within the NCAA National Office. And our role is to certify college-bound student athletes for collegiate competition. So we review their transcripts, their athletics participation in an effort to ensure that there is fairness and equitability in competition across all of our NCAA schools and divisions. So you guys heard from Westchester University, which is a Division II NCAA school, and And a little bit of a fun fact, I actually grew up just outside of Philadelphia in Bucks County. So a lot of our indoor track seasons were spent up there around Kutztown, Lehigh Valley, Westchester. So super familiar with those are my old stomping grounds. So I love getting to be here and be a part of this with all of you in the greater Philadelphia area today. So student athletes have to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center, and the registration starts at our website, eligibilitycenter.org. We say best practice is to register before freshman year, and that's because the classes they take starting in ninth grade are what matter towards their NCAA eligibility. One of the biggest updates, if you're really familiar in this space, is to know that back on September 1st, we had an update to all of our account names as part of the World Post-Settlement House Settlement in Collegiate Athletics. We've been transitioning away from the term amateurism and towards athletics eligibility. So as a result of that, our account names changed. So academic and athletics certification account, an athletics certification account, and a profile page account. And I'll talk about what each of those are. So the academic and athletics certification account, this is for students that are pursuing being recruited by all three divisions, D1, D2, and D3. They need it in order to go on an official visit. So an official visit is when that NCAA school is offering to pay for the student athlete and their family member to come visit that school. And so in order to do that at a Division I school, they have to have this account type, be registered, and have an official transcript on file before they can go on that official visit. Also, if they end up signing an athletics aid agreement, their NCAA ID number is tied to that agreement and is on that scholarship offer. So these are all reasons why they would need this. Another update is that we did have as we do probably every 4 or 5 years, reassess the fee process. There was an increase in the fee as of September 1. Fee waivers are still an option. So if you have students that receive free or reduced lunch or have a need-based financial reason, take a look at that fee waiver criteria. We also have opened that up and made it more broad. So it's not just, did you receive a fee waiver on the SAT or the ACT, or, do you qualify for free and reduced lunch? It's now for unhoused students. There's a lot of additional criteria in that fee waiver. So take a look at that to help your students and make sure that finances are not a reason to prevent them from getting registered. Our second account type is the athletics certification account. I won't spend a lot of time on this because it's primarily for international students that want to go to the Division III level. So if any of you work with students that are international or that play for a team based outside of the United States, this is the account type that they would need for D3. But that first account type works for all three divisions. And then lastly is what I consider to be the most important of the three. It's our free profile page account. This is the one that we are trying to get more and more middle schoolers signed up for, freshmen in high school signed up for. There is no registration fee associated with this. It is completely free. It's a way to get them information, get their NCAA ID number so that they can put themselves out there from a recruiting standpoint. These students tend to put their NCAA ID number in their social media profiles or in an email that they send to coaches. And then once they begin being actively recruited, that's when they can click a button in that account, that free profile page that says transition my account, and that will allow them to transition over to either of those other certification accounts, whether it's the D3 one for international students or that full academic and athletic certification account. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about core courses, just a reminder and a refresher for NCAA purposes. If you're new to this process, we are looking at each high school's NCAA approved core course list. So when you go to our website, eligibilitycenter.org, and you click in the upper right-hand corner for high schools, that's where you can search any high school and their core course list. You can put it in by search by name, city, and state, or if you know their 6-digit CEEB code, that works as well. But we're looking at courses in the areas of English, mathematics, sciences, social sciences, and then our additional core course area can be world languages, comparative religion, philosophy, or extra courses from any of those areas before English, math, etc. They do have to be on the school's list of approved core courses, meet the high school graduation requirements in one of those areas in order to be considered a core course. And the courses must be completed at a high school that has either a cleared or extended evaluation status with the NCAA Eligibility Center. You would be able to see that. It is public information on our website. When you look up the high school, you would be able to see their status listed right under their name. One of the other updates for this group was that as of August of 2024, online programs, what we used to call non-traditional, I now call it new traditional because it's the mainstream thing, it feels like at this point. Online programs no longer have to go through a separate online review process. Essentially each course. So if you're a high school and you offer a few of your courses online, you would submit those as a core course and indicate in the question process that it is taught online. So there'll be some follow-up questions, and that is how that review process happens now on a course by course basis. So it's no longer a separate full program review. And then I just wanted to touch quickly on the certification process. Nothing new here. Academic requirements have not changed. I just always try to make counselors aware, those that help student athletes and their families aware, always try to aim for early academic qualifier. This is where we look at the first three years of coursework, 9, 10, and 11. And if they've completed 14 of the 16 core courses in the required areas and earned a 3.0 or higher grade point average in those 14 core courses, they can be deemed eligible before senior year. And then NCAA eligibility is one last thing on their plate to be worrying about in senior year. So as an early academic qualifier, they would meet the same requirements as a qualifier, meaning that they are eligible for athletics aid, practice, and competition. And then D1 qualifier. So with that, 16 core courses, and this is looking at 8 semesters or 4 years of coursework, 9 through 12, and 16 core courses. 10 of those 16 core courses do have to be completed prior to the 7th semester, or what's most commonly referred to as senior year. The reason we say 7th semester is because we start counting from their initial enrollment in freshman year forward 7 semesters. So if they repeated a year of high school, that does not stop counting. So if someone did 9th grade, a repeated year of 9th grade, and then 10th grade, at the end of that 10th grade is actually the end of their 6 semesters, which means before they go into their 11th grade, this 10-7 needs completed. So it's important to know that, because if they have to repeat a year, we always encourage, if you can take, the repeated English 9, for example, in first semester, can you then progress on to English 10 in second semester. Especially with English and math courses, it's so important to try to stay on track with those. So that's something to be mindful of when advising these students or helping those who advise them, that is a part of the process if anyone repeats or reclasses. And then overall, we're looking at 16 core courses, 10-7 requirement, and a 2.3 GPA in those 16 core courses. And then I won't spend a ton of time on D2. The reason is because if you aim for D1 eligibility, by default, you would also be eligible for Division 2. So that's an easy way to remember it. But one of the things I love about Division 2, I am a graduate of Division 2 myself, so I love that this change happened, is that a few years ago, D2 changed it to where there is no non-qualifier. What that means is that as long as the student is a high school graduate and they have been admitted to that D2 school, at minimum, they would be a partial qualifier in their first year, which means more access to scholarship money for student athletes. So as a partial qualifier, they would be eligible for that scholarship and to practice with the team that first year. So if something happens, we understand life happens, events happen, things happen to where maybe that student athlete did not meet D1 qualifier or even D2 full qualifier, make sure that they're still considering Division 2 as an option where they could still have access to scholarship money so that they're going on and having access to a degree and to higher education. And then a big change for D3 that goes into effect for students enrolling this fall. So this is new as of September of last year for students enrolling in fall 2026. all student athletes have to be registered with the NCAA. So not just international students, all student athletes. And that's where that free profile page is effective because they don't have to have a paid account. They just have to have an account. So this is so D3 schools can now track on the progress of their student athletes in the NCAA system, if there's any transferring, progress towards degree, etc. So make sure if you are helping any students going Division III, historically they never had to register with the NCAA. That is now a requirement, but that free profile page is sufficient for meeting that requirement to register with the NCAA. These are, if you're not joining us from a mobile phone, you can scan these. These are our academic standards for divisions 1, 2, and 3, but know that all of this will also be provided in the PDF that you'll have access to after today's presentation. All of this information is also on our website, eligibilitycenter.org. But I also wanted to give you a little bit of information about recruiting because we do get a lot of questions around, is my student being recruited? What does it mean to be recruited? How could I help them get recruited? So starting out so that we all have a baseline of what it means to be recruited at the NCAA. All of the things that you see here are by definition recruiting for NCAA. So if they get a phone call from a coach, a text message, a direct message on social media, emails, if the coach comes to visit their high school, if they are evaluating them at a camp, if they are paying for that official visit for them to come visit, if they're offering them a scholarship or an athletics aid agreement, all of that is active recruiting. So recruiting can start as early as ninth grade, typically with just materials about the university, but summer after 10th grade, typically June 15th after grade 10 is when most sports open up in the recruiting process, especially like men's football is June 15th or the first day of classes of their junior year. That's when a lot of that active recruiting can begin. For some students, it may not occur until senior year, but for a lot of those elite athletes, we see that in the junior year. Every sport has its own recruiting calendar, so you can access that information on our website as well. There are different periods in which coaches are allowed to have contact or are not allowed to have contact or can come evaluate them but can't speak to them. So lots of different do's and don'ts in the recruiting space. All of those rules are on NCAA coaches. The rules are not on the students. So if it's a time period when maybe they aren't hearing from coaches, it might just be they're too young in the recruiting process still, or that it's a dead period or a recruiting shutdown period in which coaches are not allowed to be out there actively recruiting. But you can find all of those timelines on our website under the recruiting calendar resources. These are questions that we suggest the students ask the schools in the recruiting process. What academic resources are out there? What are additional team responsibilities? What are athletic training and medical expenses that are covered depending on which level and division of school that it is? What's the coach's philosophy and style? One of the biggest things that I hear from student athletes going from high school to college is that they assumed that because they were being recruited, they were going to be playing immediately. Well, I was a starter in high school, so I assumed that would be the same going to college. And maybe the coach had in their mind that they were going to redshirt that student freshman year, which means they would only be practicing with the team and not playing. And if that was not clearly communicated to that student athlete in the recruiting process from a mental health perspective and from a transition to the college level, that could have an impact if they weren't expecting that. I am the mother of an 8-year-old who I have to tell everything ahead of time. This is the plan. This is what we're going to do. And I wish our coaches did the same thing to the student athletes. But unfortunately, they don't. So we encourage the student athletes and their families to ask these types of questions. Like, do you anticipate me being a starter? In the recruiting process, say, where am I in your depth chart? Am I your top recruit in this position? Am I second? Am I third? Ask those types of questions and always know that an offer is not an offer until it's in writing. So something verbal is not something that a coach can be held to or that the student can be held to until there has been a signed athletics aid agreement between that recruit or that student athlete and that school. So all things that they should ask in the process. Ask about the scholarship renewal. Is this a 4-year scholarship? Is it a 1-year renewable scholarship? Is the scholarship made up of both academics and athletics money? And if so, what do I need to do to maintain that? So a lot of times schools will do 50% academics, 50% athletics, and maybe you need like a 2.6 to keep your athletic scholarship, but maybe you need a 2.8 to keep the academic side of things. And if students don't know that and they lose the academic side, then all of a sudden they're in a position after first semester where they have to come up with more tuition money second semester. And so that could affect their ability to stay at that school. So all really, really important questions to ask in the recruiting process so that they know the expectations on them. And then these are just best practices for student athletes of what they should be doing. I cannot encourage students enough. Check their emails, monitor their emails. If it's their parents' email address, make sure the parents are checking it. We encourage student athletes to be registered with their email addresses because they need to be learning these responsibilities early on. The athletic department's going to be emailing them if they have information. So they need to know that they need to be checking the email and that that's really important. But as with their NCAA Eligibility Center account, when more information is needed or there are reminders that it's time to do certain things, they're assigned a task in their NCAA account, which prompts an email reminder to them. So really important for them to be monitoring all of that throughout the recruiting process and throughout their, especially their senior year. That's when a lot of these timelines come up. Additional best practices here. I won't go in detail in all of these, but when they register, even with that free profile page account, they get a 10-digit NCAA ID number. Student athletes put those in their social media profiles all the time so that coaches have access to that so that they can place them on their school's recruiting list so that they can be evaluated, know where they stand academically in their NCAA account, and what they need to do senior year in order to become eligible by the time they graduate. Athletics aid, this is what used to be referred to as the National Letter of Intent program. You probably heard of students signing NILs. That is no longer a thing. The NIL program went away, not to be confused with NLI, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. But NIL was the National Letter of NLI was the National Letter of Intent program. See, I've already confused myself with all these abbreviations that we love here at the NCAA. The athletics aid, this is the scholarship process where a student can sign with a school. It's completely voluntary, but signing does end the recruiting process. So once a student is signed with a school, then other schools are not allowed to contact them, other NCAA schools. And it does provide for a minimum of 1 academic year, a scholarship agreement between that student athlete and the school, so long as that they are admitted to that NCAA school and that they are eligible under NCAA rules. So those rules that I just covered with you. So the other acronym I just mentioned, name, image, and likeness. So not a ton of information that I can answer for you here or share because part of the name, image, and likeness process is that in the House settlement that happened last summer, the CSC, which is the College Sports Commission, was developed out of that. And so the CSC is really the entity that we partner with, but that is overseeing name, image, and likeness and the tracking on all of that and the rules and enforcement around name, image, and likeness. I will tell you just some general information and provide you with resources to walk away from today. That way, if you have student athletes or schools that are interested in learning more about this, there are over 32 states that do have name, image, and likeness that is allowed at the high school level, but many states still do not. It's just only at the college level. You can find more information at on.ncaa.com/NIL. But NIL is a student athlete's ability to benefit from use of their name, image, and likeness. So always make sure that they're checking first with their high school athletics association, the compliance office at the NCAA school. And then the biggest change in this space was that for any deals of high school student athletes, any deals in the amount of $600 or higher that has been agreed to or entered into by a high school student athlete beginning July 1st, 2025 and going forward, they will have to disclose that to their NCAA school and to that CSC, that College Sports Commission. So make sure that those families of student athletes that are partaking in NIL are keeping a log of all of this information because they can't report it until they have a school email address. For those of you that are part of my millennial generation, it's like the old Facebook where you couldn't be a part of Facebook until you had a college email address back in the day. That's kind of how it is with the NIL Go and the NIL Assist platform. Those are for current NCAA student athletes. So they need to keep track of their NIL deals or agreements. And once they become a student athlete, they will be required to report all of those to their school and through that avenue. But we have great resources on here where you can learn more about initial eligibility and the NIL disclosure requirements, and more resources that directly send you to CSC for more information. And then I did want to give this group a few updates of changes that we went live with in October to our high school portal for primary or secondary contacts. So if any of you are primary or secondary contacts, or if you assist high schools, primary or secondary contacts with the NCAA, these are good things to know. The account access has changed to where we now have what's called an MFA, a multi-factor authentication process when they log in. And that's because of some of the new views that they have and more detailed information to student athlete reports where they can see and upload transcripts. They can see if they've had a preliminary evaluation, where they stand, all of that. But the first step is for them to log in, make sure their contacts are up to date. If they're not, the change form is where they can update their high school's contact information. When we need information from the schools, we email those primary or secondary contacts. So it is so important that those are up to date. We do have a high school portal quick start guide for any new primary or secondary counselors that need help navigating that. This QR code would take you directly to that guide. It's also on our resource page on the high school portal, which again is linked on our website, eligibilitycenter.org. And then I will wrap it up with a few resources for you. I did want to talk a little bit about our Division I core guarantees. This is what's really great about Division I schools. Plus, if it's a student athlete that's attending a Division II or Division III school, but participating in a Division I sport, biggest example there, I like to use a D3 school with a D1 ice hockey program. That's very common in that sport. If they are participating in a D1 sport, that school is still required to provide these core guarantees. So the schools required to provide at least 9 of the following when it comes to academic services, career counseling, and then life skills training and education in at least 9 of the areas you see listed there. The reason there's an asterisk next to the DEIB ones is just because there was a blanket waiver with some of the federal legislation that went out last fall for the 25-26 academic year. But otherwise, everything that you see there are part of the core guarantees that these NCAA Division I schools are providing to their student athletes on campus. You can find more information on that by scanning the QR code you see there on the screen. We also have a really great high school counselor tutorial to the NCAA Eligibility Center. This is one that in various different states, we've worked with the state counselors associations that they can earn credit towards their professional development requirements. So scan it, take a look at it, see if that qualifies within the state of Pennsylvania. I don't have that information today, but I can always follow up and see if they're one that does. And if not, maybe we can work with them to make that happen. But this is a really great course that we've partnered with Butler University here in Indianapolis to set up that helps counselors know how to advise their student athletes. It keeps them up to date on all information. So our staff in the high school team works directly with Butler University so that all updates are included within that course in real time. So with that, I'll leave it with these resources that we have here. And if there are questions after today, you can also scan this QR code and connect directly with the Eligibility Center. But our guide for the high school counselor is a really great PDF document that kind of gives you an overarching thing of everything you can think of: dual enrollment courses, submitting and updating core course lists for the high school, uploading transcripts, how to advise student athletes, time management information for them, really a little bit of everything you can think of. But with that, I'll stop yapping and I will see what questions this group might have for me. I think I've got about 5 more minutes, and then I have to shoot into the presentation that just started with my colleague here at North Central High School in Indianapolis, which is my next stop on the tour.
Wow, Elizabeth. That was great. That was a lot of information, and you really packed it in. I have no idea how you did all that in such a short period of time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so from the group, we do have a question. So Sonia is asking, can a student still register for their NCAA account after ninth grade? And then how does it affect the student if they register after the preferred timeline?
Yes, absolutely. Students can register at any time. They just can't be certified to compete, as a student athlete until they have registered, transcript been submitted, and be certified to play. But we always encourage the younger the better. That free profile page is where we encourage students to start, but there's no like cutoff, so to speak, for registration. So the earlier the better, but no cutoff.
Okay. And then Mary said, has a question about if a student completes high school level classes in eighth grade and is not on the high school transcript,
And
and it is not on the high school transcript, is it a part of the 10-7?
Yep. So I think
Yeah.
I can see the question here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a really great question.
It
Eighth
is
grade
a good question.
coursework that is high school coursework that is taken in eighth grade is able to count for NCAA as long as it appears on the high school transcript for course title, grade, and credit, and that course title is on that high school's NCAA core course list. It will count towards 10-7. It will count towards their requirements. So just make sure that that's on there. I do see someone asked about SAT and ACT. That's a great question. So a few
Yeah.
years ago, we got rid of the SAT ACT requirement. So it was paused since 2020, permanently went away in 2023. We encourage students to still take it, to still, submit it in the admissions process. They cannot submit it to the NCAA because we don't use it any longer. So it's no longer a requirement. They would just work through the admissions process to that school.
Do you see the question from Lurleen? Any data on how many athletes from a particular school district?
That's information that we can share directly with a school district if they reach out to us, but it's not public information. So if a district is interested in that, they can always get in touch with us, and we're happy to share directly with them on number of registrants. We can even work with them on what their non-qualifier rate is and how we can work to get that down. To see, we identify top school districts all across the country where we do see an increase in non-qualifiers, and our goal is to make sure that every student has an opportunity to make it to the college level and have access to a degree. So we do work with a lot of districts. Philadelphia is one that 10 years ago we really had to work with. Now they've done a really great job to get those numbers so low. So tons of registrants, and they're really done so much to make that better. I have to give a shout out to Jimmy, their AD, who's also from the Bucks County area. We grew up just around the corner from each other. If anyone knows that area and knows Tanner Brothers, we joke that we graduated the same year of high school and had some mutual friends. But that is one that they have done a ton of work in that school district to make sure that their student athletes are informed. We were just out in partnership with the Philadelphia Eagles in December doing something for Philadelphia Public Schools, and we did a student athlete panel with former Eagle players, Jason Avant, if you remember him, and a current rookie from the Eagles, as well as student athletes from Temple University. And then I moderated that panel, and we talked about all of the opportunities that college athletics can bring to you, whether it be a professional career and, a professional athlete career, all of those things. So really a great opportunity in Philadelphia Public Schools is really, really great to be involved with us. So that's
Yeah, we want you to come back and do that again. We want some of the big rah-rah high school events that you're doing, especially since, we've got two dates here in Philly. So if
that'll
that ever happens again, we might be bringing you guys back. Real quick, I think this is probably going to be our last question based on your time, Elizabeth. But Tom is just asking, what are the differences between the NCAA and the NAIA schools and their programs?
Yeah, because I'm not the NAIA, I don't know the biggest differences. I'm actually doing a presentation with them in May, I think, in partnership. So Josh Smith, who runs their outreach for Eligibility Center, I've worked with him a ton as far as just being present. They have an NAIA Eligibility Center, so just know students have to register separately if they're looking to go to an NAIA school. So I'm not well versed on what the academic requirements are, but just know that there are NAIA schools schools that are separate from the NCAA. So we have over 1,100 colleges and universities that are all NCAA schools, and NAIA has their own membership of schools. So if a student is interested in competing for an NAIA school, that's great. Just make sure that they're registering with the NAIA eligibility center versus if it's an NCAA school, they need to register with the NCAA and meet those requirements. So they are two separate processes.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And Elizabeth, thank you. This is really, really great. And we so appreciate you coming. That was action packed. So we will be sending a lot of that out, and we did record it. So hopefully people can take advantage of that. I see on your screen that you have some information for getting in contact and getting more information about all of the eligibility center information, but also, do you have contact information for yourself directly that you'd like to share, or how is, what's the best way for people to be in touch?
Yeah, I'm out on the road a lot of the time, so it's really best to be reaching out to our high school support line and customer service. They can help out. The high school support line is dedicated to the primary and secondary contacts at school districts and high schools. So if you're not the primary or secondary one, you'll just want to be sure to use that second phone number there. That's our college-bound student athlete and support line for those who support student athletes, families, etc. So that 877-262-1492, and they can help you there with that. But I didn't want to, because it takes me much longer to get back to people, I would
Right.
definitely say that would be the contact information there, and they can help you out.
We can certainly appreciate that. Well, all the best to you today and all of your events. And thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. And folks, join me in thanking Elizabeth and all that she shared today. Thank you so much.